All right, thank you everybody. Welcome back. Our next presenters up are going to be speaking about exhibition design and building management. Our first presenter is Lana Hum. Lana is MoMA's Director of Exhibition Design and Production since 2013. She joined the institution in 2003 as Exhibition Designer and Production Manager and has served in design and project management roles at the Whitney Museum and the Jewish Museum. With a background in architecture from leading firms like Pei Cobb Freed and Associates and Glackman Maynor Associates, Lana leads a talented team of designers, production managers, and builders in producing MoMA's exhibition program. Championing environmental sustainability in the exhibition design and construction fields has been a long-standing pursuit for her and the exhibition design team and the production team that she leads. So let's welcome her up.
Inspirational presentation. So much of what you said resonated with me and with the team at MoMA. At MoMA, I'm only one part of a museum-wide effort to implement effective sustainability practices. I'm here today with my colleagues Rachel Kim and Eric Patton, who have been close partners in the initiatives I'll be talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better? Okay, great. At MoMA, we've adopted sustainability as one of our core principles. Following the achievement of LEED Platinum certification for our newly renovated spaces in 2019, we formed a sustainability department which leads a multi-departmental task force that works across all museum areas, including facilities, collections, and exhibitions to achieve our sustainability goals. As the head of exhibition design, I have the privilege of leading a talented team of designers and builders who collaborate with curators and artists to produce the exhibition program. We have a huge responsibility to sustainability. Since we're constantly building and rebuilding the gallery environments, we have to think deeply about our building practices. How can we make things feel new and different and appropriate for a variety of art installations and still achieve low-waste exhibition building? Well, there's nothing particularly innovative about our tactics. It's not revolutionary. We simply follow the basic tenets of sustainability: reduce, reuse, and recycle. We started by reducing construction waste, building upon a historical practice of reuse. Typically, when we build gallery walls, we save and reuse the steel studs from prior installations. To address sheetrock waste, however, we introduced a new approach. For every gallery in the museum, we established an evergreen condition, a set of walls that never change. To this evergreen condition, we added a set of modular walls. These walls are prefabricated and movable, so we can change the gallery architecture. You can see the two walls in the middle are modular walls. They make new spaces so that we don't have to create exhibition waste, the exhibition waste of a brand new build. So this actually resulted in increasing the collaboration already inherent in the design process. Here we have Ann Temkin, our chief curator of painting and sculpture, in a clean gallery, finding the right placement for not only Matisse's Red Studio, but the wall on which the Red Studio will hang. I think that's how we sold the curators on modular walls, because they could have even more input into the exhibition design. I'll go to the next slide. So we built the evergreen walls with pre-framed openings that can be closed or opened to create multiple ways to move through the galleries. This increases the amount of change that we can make in an exhibition plan. So for installations that cannot be accommodated with the modular walls, we save as many existing walls as possible from the previous exhibition and evolve them into the next exhibition's floor plan. So this is the floor plan for Signals, a show of media works. And we always keep the evergreen, and then we evolved the plan by making a few adjustments into the plan for Ed Ruscha, Now Then, a show of mostly paintings and works on paper. To keep waste minimal, we have established a not-to-exceed cap of annual sheetrock usage and continue to reuse the steel. We also employ a waste management company committed to closed-loop recycling. This means that they use a method of separating the paper and gypsum in the sheetrock to redirect the materials into creating new gypsum products. In these ways, we've reduced the museum's exhibition building waste by 74% since 2020. So as you can see here, this is Signals, the show of media works, and then Ed Ruscha, Now Then, which is a show of predominantly paintings and works on paper. And the environments are very different without much architectural change. I think there's just very little architectural change. But you can see that, with lighting and with paint and a different kind of feel in the exhibition layout, you can create something that's very different. The carpet in the Carlos Mota installation was also borrowed. So we did not have new carpet for that as well. Go to the next one. So this is, on the right, is a image of Anmelé's installation, 14 Views. And this installation has a very specific architecture. Anmélé was evoking the 19th century spectacle, the circular painted painted panoramas that are called cycloramas. So it was very bespoke to her installation. But we actually did manage to work with Latoya Ruby Fraser, and for Latoya, the impact of the environment. She's an environmental activist. The impact of the environment on people's lives are really embedded in her work. We did manage to work with her to save that very bespoke architecture for her installation by introducing a lighting effect. We changed the color of the walls. It's obviously a very different installation, but I think it was really important to transform that room since it was so specific to Anmélé that we had to really work to make it feel completely different. And the shape works for Latoya because she does want an immersive environment, an environment where you walk in and you feel, you might not want to feel that you're in a gallery environment, with a four-walled gallery environment. So I'm going to credit Latoya for that success. So we applied the same reduce, reuse approach to our display cases. This also took a design reset. First, we had to standardize the design of the display cases for them to have the same visual language so they feel like they belong anywhere in the museum. So for Grace Wells Bonner's Artist Choice Show, we actually built no new platforms. We reused everything from Barbara Chase Riboud's show, a show of Barbara Chase Riboud and Giacometti together. We reused all those platforms by just adapting them and bringing them down to another gallery. So we had no new build of exhibition platforms in Grace's show. So this was a very wacky thing that we did, and it actually, we were crazy enough to try it, but it actually worked. We built a wall to disguise the equipment for Paola Antonetti's game on video games. So we actually made that wall into the platform that you see for her next show. So it was something that the carpenters really balked at first, but then they really got into it. It was it was an effort. We managed to figure it out. And again, like Winnie said, I love the small wins. I think they all do add up to have bigger impact. And also, it was fun for them, I think. I think they enjoyed it, and I think, it kind of gets them energized for thinking about things like that for the future. All right, so this is a really boring image, but this is the work that it takes to move all these platforms, pedestals, table cases that we build and store and reuse. So this is how we track the movement of all of those cases. And I'm going to give a shout out to my colleague Cindy Chong for leading that effort. So as you can imagine, this can be a really complex coordination involving many players to catalog, track, refurbish, and relocate hundreds of pedestals, platforms, and display cases. But as complex as that is, that's not really the challenging part. The real challenge is getting into our collective mindset that this is how we design exhibitions. These are the tools we employ to create changing environments that are always responsive to new ideas and that feel different and bespoke every time we change them. There will be times when we have to build new, but if we plan for the future, we can make that new thing in a modular way so that it can be adapted to other uses. We can also think about about the new thing as having another life in another setting outside of the museum. For all the things that we cannot use for the next exhibition, we facilitate staff giveaways or donations to other arts organizations. So here's some frames that our frame shop makes and that they find their way, they're regularly gathered and given away to staff so they can take them home and they have a new life in their homes. And we also, I just want to make a quick mention that we also use vendors that practice closed loop recycling. So for an upcoming media environment that we're doing, we're using a vendor that makes curtains from recycled curtains, and we also do the same with our plastics vendor. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just cite an example of a large donation of materials. I'd like to use the example of Adam Pendleton's Who is Queened, a commissioned work consisting of a large 40-foot tall structure. At the close of the exhibition, we were able to donate hundreds of linear footage of lumber back to the production house that fabricated it. This meant investing the time to do a careful demo. Again, our carpenters were involved in doing a very controlled demolition because we wanted to save as many reusable pieces as possible. And in the end, we were able to save 70% of it. Our sustainability initiative has caused us to be more inventive as designers and more collaborative with all the museum's thinkers, builders, and artists. Designers and artists are naturally curious people, so we think of exhibition design as an area rich with creative opportunities to pursue sustainability. We are uniquely positioned to be effective in this effort. Being wise with your resources is just being a good designer. So I just wanted to end with Hiroko Ishikawa, who is one of our designers, and she used the opportunity of making a new gallery bench to design something that used a standard sheet of plywood as the basis for the design. And the carpenters, again, got on board with this. She was also the same person that engineered that wall to platform situation. So they sized and they detailed the bench to produce the least amount of wasted material. We are also currently working with 2 artists to explore using the materials from discarded crates to make exhibition display furniture. So we are asking the curators, artists, and the curators that we work with to work with us in these ways without compromising their vision. It is in service to sustainability, but I'd like to say that in the end, it's just good design. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Sophia. Our next presenter, Sophia Figueroa. Sophia is a designer dedicated to the realization of accessible design through the use of scale and storytelling to highlight contemporary artworks and curatorial narratives. Over the past 5 years at Glenstone, Sophia has collaborated with curators, artists, and foundations to design exhibitions that offer engaging experiences of the highest construction quality. She recently stepped into the design lead role, where she will shepherd the design to build new projects that will expand Glenstone's program. Sophia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be in a room with such incredible museum professionals. So I'm coming from Glenstone Museum. We are a museum of contemporary and modern art situated in rural Potomac, Maryland, about 15 miles north of Washington, D.C. And really, our mission at Glenstone is to integrate art, architecture, and nature. So we opened our doors to the public in 2006 with this beautiful and intimate gallery designed by Charles Gwathmey, but it was apparent to our founders immediately that this was not the end of Glenstone and that there was so much more to offer to the public. So Glenstone, as we're known today, opened our doors to visitors to experience our major expansion, including what is pictured here, our pavilions building, which is our main exhibition space. The pavilions was designed by Thomas Pfeiffer and Partners and includes 11 exhibition spaces, both exhibition spaces dedicated to the long-term view of artists and also rotating exhibition spaces. And each pavilion is connected by a radial walking link that we call the passage, all surrounded by this beautiful water court. So let's rewind. I want to take a moment to sort of reflect on the conception of Glenstone and our mission. So our founders, Mitch and Emily Rales, have a profound belief that art is essential to life. And so for the past 15 years, they've been building an incredible collection of art that truly exemplifies the way that we understand our modern world. And perhaps their largest contribution is the way that they've chosen to show their collection to the world. Firstly, always for free, and secondly, in this rural landscape that allows visitors to have an unhurried and meditative experience with art. So our expansion, we like to call it G2, took over 10 years to execute. And during these 10 years, there was ample time for reflection and thoughtful design of how our institution would operate. One thing was for certain, sustainability would be a priority. So at Glenstone, we operate on 5 core values, one of the core values being we think in the long term. We define success in terms of decades, not years, and we are committed to preservation and sustainability in everything that we do. So with our expansion, we expanded from about 23,000 square feet of the built environment to over 200,000 square feet, which are several buildings that house our staff, exhibition spaces. But with this scale of an expansion, there was an enormous responsibility to do so in a sustainable way and to set sustainable practices for years to come. So we really had 3 goals. Keep our humans healthy, keep our beloved staff healthy, and our visitors, keep our collection safe and the collection of our gracious lenders, and keep our environment safe. So how did we do? So a huge part of the Glenstone experience is our landscape, and our landscape is highly designed with the collaboration of Peter Walker and Associates, our beloved landscape architects. And really the intention was to carve and cut out and shape our meadows to allow for this dynamic experience for visitors to walk through our walking paths and have these dynamic vistas where they're seeing our sycamore tree, split rocker in the pavilions. But this was the design intention. So to achieve the design intention, of course, we had to do so in a sustainable way. So all of the flora and fauna that we're seeing today are native species. So they're native plants, and they were selected in a way where it would allow for a very healthy ecosystem. And of course, we deal with invasive species, I'm sure, as everyone does. So our commitment to sustainability with our landscape care is using organic herbicides. So when dealing with things like Bermuda grass and other pesky invasive species, we do so with products that we know will not harm our environment. So I want to touch on our water management systems. So underneath the landscape, we have several buried cisterns that collect rainwater. So with the enormous campus that we have, there's a lot of need for irrigation. And so with irrigation, we're constantly using recycled water. The gorgeous pond that's in front of our Charles Gwathmey building is also a reservoir that we tap for irrigation. And our stream restoration. So not only are we recycling water to use for irrigation, but we've designed our landscape in a way that there's several checkpoints for rainwater to filter through so that there isn't an abundance of rainwater that's heading into our streams that surround our campus and eroding the banks of the streams. So that's a way that we take care of the land that we occupy. And another step that we embarked on was collaborating with the county to actually embark on a huge project to restore these streams. We're looking at our Greenbrier stream that follows one of the outlines of our campus. I'll touch now on some building maintenance systems that we have in place. So at Glenstone, our visitor experience philosophy is, again, this unhurried and meditative experience. And so we release tickets with a density that allows for about 300 square feet per visitor. In our largest exhibition space, in our pavilion space, this means that there's about, at the most, 160 people in that space at once, which is rarely a number that we actually meet. And so per code, we have to provide fresh air in these spaces per the occupancy. But if we were to do this, we would be working our HVAC systems excessively, unnecessarily. So what we've done is we've partnered with the county to get a variance that allows us to just pump fresh air in our spaces dependent on our visitor density model. So we're not overworking our systems, and of course we're constantly monitoring the CO2 levels in our spaces to ensure that safety, that indoor safe air quality. But again, our mission with building maintenance practices is to make our systems work the least that they have to. So 3 of our buildings at Glenstone have LEED certificates. Our arrival hall, where visitors park their car, get onboarded, and embark on their journey at Glenstone, is platinum certified, and our pavilions, our major exhibition space, and our cafe both have gold. So how do we continue these commitments to sustainability? I touched on sort of the foundation that we were given, the thoughtfulness that happened during the construction of Glenstone, but now we'll sort of go to maybe more adoptable practices. 100% of the energy that we use to power our buildings is generated by wind. Here I have a graphic that shows the history of our temperature and humidity levels in our pavilion space over the course of the year. And what you're seeing is this jagged line of temperature and humidity changes that are affected by our outdoor conditions. So again, our philosophy with building maintenance systems is to not make our systems work hard unnecessarily in an effort to create a low energy use intensity. So we don't have a stance with temperature and humidity where we enforce a super strict 70 degree temperature and 50 degree humidity. Instead, with, of course, the partnership and blessing of our conservators, we really ride the ebbs and flows of how the outdoor conditions affect our indoor spaces. And when we do need to make adjustments to those, to either the temperature or humidity, we do so in such a small way and over the course of several hours, so our systems are not working too hard unnecessarily. And again, this is all in an effort to generate a low EUI, energy use intensity. So we're super proud that over the past years, we've never reached an EUI score of above 50, which is such an accomplishment compared to our peer institutions. Often you're seeing scores of above 100. So taking a step outside back to our sustainable landscaping practices, we are committed to reforestation of the land that we occupy. So every single year, we're committed to planting at least 1,000 trees. And actually, since we've opened the pavilions, we've planted 13,000 trees. And it's such a special way to engage with our staff and our community members. So biannually, we have an Arbor Day where everyone gets their hands dirty. They come out, plant trees. We invite our community partners, often the University of Maryland or other partners that we are connected with often. We all plant trees, and it's a lot of fun. And back to our meadow, again, our meadow, it's a design choice. And so when thinking about maintaining the design intention of the meadow, we have to do so in a sustainable way. So meadows turn into forests if they're not maintained. So a way that we maintain our meadows is annually we mow it. But something that we've actually started this year is the practice of burning it. So what burning does is it gets to the thickest, lowest layer of organic matter and really softens the land, deals with invasive species, and sort of allows for a sort of even playing ground for the annual meadow to grow. And as Lana touched on before, there's an enormous responsibility to manage the amount of construction that we as museums operate. So here I'm showing the 4 first exhibitions in our rotating gallery space, room 2 as we like to call it. It's about 9,000 square feet of exhibition space, of columnless space. So there's constantly a need for several linear feet of drywall. And so what is so special about these 3 exhibitions is that they all share the same plywood and studs. So I'm so happy to hear that there's a way to recycle gypsum, which is something that we will definitely look into. I didn't know that was a thing, but we reuse all the materials that we can constantly in every opportunity that we have. And I'll end with this photo of my partner in crime, Jose Castro. He's our capital projects manager. So we actually started to sign these pieces of plywood as a way to maybe commemorate our work and for a little Easter egg for future generations of exhibition designers and construction managers. Thank you.
All right, Lana, if you don't mind coming up to the table, we'll have a little Q&A session. Hopefully we have Q&A. Any questions? Ooh, lots of hands, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Tervala from the Baltimore Museum of Art. Thank you both so much for your presentations. I was really so inspired to hear about all of the reuse and recycling that you're doing. I'm particularly curious about your storage situation, because if you're reusing things a lot, you have to store them somewhere. So do you have a sense about how large your storage is, where it is relative to your institution, and just sort of how you are moving things back and forth, particularly with walls and studs and all of these sorts of things?
Such a excellent question. And MoMA's in New York City, spaces at a premium. That was hard-won space. And I think AV has not forgiven us, like, for taking their space. But there was a space that was kind of a residual space from the building project. And it's on the floor with our mechanical systems. And the mechanical systems didn't require the amount of space, but it made this like awkward kind of not very accessible space that we couldn't really use for offices. So we did have something that came up that worked well, but in the past when we've tried this before, and you know, we've had kind of like a re-energized effort towards sustainability, but Eric and Rachel, my colleagues, were reminding me of like other past efforts that we've had towards doing the same things, just recycling, reusing more, reducing. And I think that it was really that commitment to sustainability that allowed us to get the space, because we did have storage space in our in Queens, but I think the workload and just like the energy of having it shuttled back and forth just wasn't worth it. So we knew that this plan of us reusing display furniture really relied on an on-site storage space. And it wasn't easy, and I think like Whitney said it best, it's like the real work is just kind of building the community of people that are gonna buy in enough to like do all of this, because it's extra, it's a lot of extra. I think the art handlers weren't used to packing things carefully so that they stay pristine, that we can reuse them. We use packing blankets. There was a earlier effort where we would bubble wrap, and that didn't make any sense. So like we had to evolve the systems, and and I have to say, like, it wasn't always like this triumphant like moment where everyone felt very gratified that we saved this one case. It was often like, that there was real opposition to it, and the art handlers like would, I think my team got into it with the art handlers because they weren't wrapping, we weren't saving things, because when things get broken, like it's just not, it's a wasted effort. So it was tense, and storage was it's a difficult situation too, and I really do mean it when AV they're still mad at us, but like we're it really does rely on a commitment for all those resources to make this happen, the people power and the actual space.
Yeah, I can touch on that very similarly. I think in the past years we've adopted a less strict mindset when saving things like vitrines and cases, and we aren't committed to using our storage space for them anymore. So what we've done, at Glenstone we have the luxury of space. We do have several spaces around the campus that aren't visitor facing, that we do have the luxury of storing it in there. But really it's changing the mindset that just because we in the future could use this vitrine in an art space, we don't have to store it as art, which alleviates our registration teams, which alleviates our art preps to transport and wrap those things. So it's really just gaining flexibility on how the commitment and the resources that we're going to use to store things.
Hi. I don't know if this is, I'm Sabrina from Dallas. I was really curious, Lana, if you could speak a little bit about, I think it's really exciting when we can reuse walls or minimize construction as much as possible. And I'm wondering what those conversations look like maybe across projects. If you've got several projects, and it sounds like you were mentioning that there was sort of a cap on new wall build institutionally, which means that people would have to really share and discuss. Can you speak a little bit about how that's working?
So again, like, it's a great idea, and we have reused it, and I showed you a wonderful example of where it worked out really well, and so it did work out very well, but I feel like it just takes a commitment. There's going to be some dissension. There's going to be everyone has to my advice is for everyone just to get around the table, the designers and the curators of each of those shows, and we all talk about it. And I encourage that at every turn. And sometimes when you even suggest that, it kind of resolves itself. Like, like people were like, okay, fine. Well, I don't want to talk about it. I'll just, but it's not, again, a lot of difficult conversations, negotiations, compromise, but we do have that cap that we can point to, and that's non-negotiable. So we can think of other clever ways. We can think of how to move things so this works, or but yeah, that is a non-negotiable.
Is it me? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Jason Bush from the American Folk Art Museum in New York. I was really inspired by hearing you, Lana, and interested about what you may have, Sophia, in Glenstone of, once things are reused within your institution, developing those partnerships that may exist locally or regionally. And obviously, for Lana, for you, and for me in New York, there are a number of institutions of various sizes and needs that exist. Can you talk a bit more about this program of working with other institutions regarding exhibition furniture, platforms, cases, things that might not be used for your benefit or for artists or staff that are within your institution? And I will note that where you are in MoMA in Queens, we are right down the street in terms of our back of house offices for the American Folk Art Museum.
We're
so I'm
happy
thinking,
to send a truck.
yeah,
We're happy to send
we could
yes.
walk things literally down the
Yes.
street.
I love that you're bringing this up, but yes, like we actually have been donating through Material for the Arts. Yes, so exactly. So you might get something, or another arts organization might get something from MoMA via that organization. I would like to broaden it. The only institution that we've been able to broaden with it is, of course, PS1, MoMA, like PS1. So we have a lot of sharing of materials between MoMA and MoMA PS1. But I would love to broaden it for sure. And yeah, we'll talk. Yeah.
PS1, which is also in Queens, just right down the road from where MoMA Queens was, which I assume is where your storage is.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes. Oh, well, the storage is on site on the 53rd Street site. So we store very little. The exhibition design team stores very little in Queens. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on that. So we don't have a well-oiled system of donating exhibition equipment or exhibition furniture to other institutions, but what we have done is donating it to our other community partners that maybe not be a museum space. So we have supported the AME Zion Baptist Church in Potomac, Maryland, with several efforts, acting as an owner's rep for them for their new build. And what we do is when we have something on site, and I'll reference, we opened a Rebecca Quaitman exhibition about a year ago, and we built 11 of these beautiful custom vitrines for the space for archival work. And so what we did is we donated half of them to the church. And so what they'll do in the future when they open up their new building is they'll be able to show archival elements of their church, how it began, the history of it, and their new expansion. So I think there is an opportunity to start partnering, of course, with museums in Washington, D.C. Of course, there's no scarcity of them, but we try to be creative with who we can donate things to.
Thank you. Hi, thank you both. Lana, you talked about the non-negotiable caps, and I'm curious with both of you how those conversations towards kind of values-based rules like that started and went at your organizations.
We started, well, we've always, there have been kind of softer efforts, prior to the forming of the sustainability task force. We really did kind of re-energize efforts and try to put real initiatives behind these other softer intentions of the past. But I would say it was about 2020 when we instituted the cap. It was 2020. We used the, I guess we had extended some shows because of the pandemic. And so we used that opportunity to kind of reset the walls for evergreen conditions. We set the cap, and then we decided the evergreen walls would be a 10-year investment, and then we would kind of revisit. And we have revisited some moves. We take away more than we add to the evergreen condition. So if something is not working in the evergreen, then we can take that away. And then, because we do have the modular walls to kind of play around with in a more open space, yeah, but it was really the revitalization of our efforts and the sustainability department and multi-departmental sustainability team forming in 2020 that kind of gave us the permission to set a cap.
I can touch on that briefly. We do not have a cap. So that's something that I think, reflecting during all of these conversations, we need to start measuring. It's something that it's a metric that we don't collect, the linear feet of drywall that we're erecting per exhibition. So definitely inspired to do so. But really, we don't have many spaces to build to erect walls, which I think maybe lends in our benefit. Three of our rotating exhibition spaces are within spaces that are of a sort of preset proportion where we don't erect walls, and it's more so a hang or sculptures that are placed on the floor. But it's definitely a metric that I think it's important to collect that we'll start doing.
Thank you. I have yet another very practical question, and this relates to the sort of modular walls or freestanding walls idea. Obviously, at the Whitney, like Glenstone, we have no supporting like structural walls, so thus we're constantly building or creating evergreen conditions. And I've been interested in this, MoMA's idea of the modular walls, which of course the challenge is storage on the one hand. The other question I have is around loans, because there are institutions, and I have experienced this, where a work will not be lent to an exhibition if it is on a freestanding wall. So how do you, have you had those issues already, or it's such a great solution on the one hand, but then how does that work?
We have definitely encountered that, Kim, for certain in the Matisse show, actually, for a certain, yeah. Yeah, and well, we try to provide as much information about the walls as possible. So if it comes back in a loan form that the walls have to go to the ceiling, we do have a section in our facility reports that talks about the modular walls and their makeup, their composition. And I worked with our exhibitions and collections manager to write that, to just give the specs for that. I think that we do just present a lot of information, and if it's still if they still insist on having a full height to the ceiling wall, then we would move the work. But we have encountered that. And I think that we're looking also into the composition of the freestanding walls. They are stable, they're fixed to the floor. That usually kind of ameliorates any concern.
Socialization, broadly across institutions of this kind of strategy would be very useful. It's not all, it's some institutions that are still hung up on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I think I know, but I think that's a great idea, and I can kind of extend it out to other things that we're used to. We were used to working under certain restrictions. We're museum people. I think Whitney mentioned conservation and push back on some things that we do. We're on automatic with some of these things, these standards. But if we can kind of look into why we're holding on to those standards, and if there's other ways to think about those standards vis-a-vis sustainability, and so many museums have made sustainability a core goal, that maybe we can arrive at something that works, that either has a little more flexibility or sets a new standard. But I love that comment. Yeah.
Hi there, Lana and Sophia. Thank you so much. It was absolutely wonderful to hear the work that you're doing. And Sophia, shout out to you as our Maryland neighbor. So I am Asma from the Baltimore Museum of Art. I just wanted to say that we are about to embark on what we're calling the Year of the Environment for 2025 for our 110th anniversary. Our building is anti-environmentally friendly, allergic to environmentally friendly practices. And so with Kevin here, we're spearheading a multi-pronged initiative, including a green team, creating a strategic plan, as well as an artistic program. But the third part of it is a citywide eco-challenge where I'm asking cohorts to join me in thinking through more environmentally friendly practices. And that's the, and so if any of you have any ideas or suggestions or recommendations, I am somebody who really believes in collective wisdom, and I welcome any and all thoughts. But my question really is about this, what you were saying, Kendall, about values and also the promotion beyond a morality or an ethical perspective in terms of, yes, I'm a director, the financial ramifications for this. Are there municipal or federal or even private incentivizing grants that have helped you? And if anybody here knows of any, I would also love to hear that, because this is a very costly endeavor. Thank you.
I can't speak to grants, but I can speak to maybe the way that using renewable energy is being incentivized. In Maryland, we don't have windmills and we don't have the infrastructure to be reliant on renewable energy that's perhaps local, but there are several initiatives to invest in these organizations that are creating renewable energy and to invest in those folks, and then that incentivizes them, incentivizes other communities to adopt those renewable energy investments. So I think that could be an avenue where, as a sort of purchaser of energy, you're being incentivized monetarily, and also you're investing and promoting maybe the growth of more people getting into renewable energy.
And Asma, just to respond, I think this is the perfect time to put you in touch with our sustainability department. And I think we've done a lot of building upgrades and have capitalized on, I probably even government incentive programs for, to turn over to renewable energy resources. So I can give you a contact to talk to.
Have either of you looked into or used phase change thermal mass materials in either exhibition galleries or in buildings? It's something that I've looked into for art transport, for stabilizing temperatures. It's a field that's really rapidly developing. Is anybody looking into phase change thermal materials?
Is that sort of like an insulation? I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so phase change thermal mass materials are materials, so they're putting them into ceiling tiles now. They're putting them into building material fabrics. They can go behind walls, but essentially it's a material that undergoes a phase change. So from a solid to a gel or a solid to a liquid as it absorbs heat, right? And then as the space gets colder, it then emits that heat and it lowers the energy consumption bill to maintain a temperature range within a space. So it works well inside travel cases, but it can also work really, really well within rooms themselves.
No, that's not something that I'm familiar with, but it sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
I'd love definitely look
Agreed.
into it. Yeah.
We'll have to be in touch. Yeah.
Hi, thank you both so much. I'm Julia from LACMA. I lead the art installation and preparation team there. But Sophia, you mentioned the climate standards at Glenstone and that you have relaxed climate standards. Something that at LACMA we're looking at doing is meeting, instead of the current restrictions, BESO protocols. And I'm wondering if you have any standards, or if they are, and if so, what they are. And also if you've seen any changes in the collection since loosening those standards.
Could you repeat the last part?
Yeah, I know you said you collaborated with the conservators. when deciding to take this route, but I'm wondering if there's been any changes noted in the collection that conservation has attributed to those relaxed standards.
So I'll touch on sort of like the threshold that we deem acceptable. I am not confident on the exact temperature, but it's about 5 to 7 degrees either way, above or below. So that is what we've deemed accessible internally. We are our conservation team is fabulous, and it's a team of people who have had a long tenure at Glenstone, so there's a lot of confidence in research in those relationships. And we have not experienced any sort of sacrifice in the treatment and care of our works because we have this more flexible mindset. Nothing that I can attest to. I think just like other museums, the thing that we're combating most is protecting the art from our visitors and making sure that we are providing an experience for visitors that they're engaging with the artwork, but also maintaining the boundary of how we're protecting these works. So that would be, I think, the main area of address for conservators, but definitely nothing around the temperature and humidity in those rooms. And it's something that we're constantly monitoring. It's not something that we sort of set and forget. Our engineers are in our BMS systems every day and monitoring the performance of our air handlers and all of that equipment. So it's something that we're monitoring. And it's also something that maybe could be dependent on the nature of the work and the nature of the exhibition. So of course, an installation with maybe perhaps time-based media and sculpture is going to be treated maybe a little bit more differently than a hung show with works on paper and painting. So it's something that is very dynamic, and it's constantly in collaboration.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions if we.
Thank you for your presentation. This is more a comment. All of the presentations today are a reminder of how important legislation is for all of us in the room. So these are great individual practices and inspiring to think, oh, how can they be scaled? How can a museum of this size do it, or that size? Or how can we be working together? Who can do it better and lend their expertise? But for example, offshore wind energy, right? I mean, those bills fell flat off of the shore of Long Island because the people in the Hamptons didn't want windmills off, a few miles off there from sea. They didn't want that view from their beach home, right? For example. So again, it's just a reminder to me of the big picture of how important all of our voices are and how our cultural institutions need to work with our legislative advocates and our lobbyists in Washington, D.C. and our individual states to pass bills that support these sustainable practices, because it all comes home to roost in every one of our institutions.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I think this was amazing. Great conversations. Before we break for lunch, we have one more.